Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Photo Mish Mash, this one being broadcast live December 16th, 2020. We got to talk about the One Photo Challenge. I'm excited to pick my guests' brains and see how hard is it, how difficult is it to pick just one favorite photo from all your content this year. We're going to talk about that. We're also talking about, we shared a warning last week about the FAA cracking down on drone pilots. I've heard even more since that video, and I want to share it with you all as a warning to make sure you're flying on the right side of the law. And hopefully we're going to be chatting about things that you should start doing to your catalog or your photo organization to make sure you're all kind of ready to go for next year. I know personally, the further I get from certain folders and functions of the Lightroom, I just kind of leave it alone and it starts to gather dust, and then I run across it 5 years later and I'm like, why didn't I take care of that in the moment? Now I've got all these old dusty pictures I don't care about. So we've got tips and tricks for that, as well as editing your photos and lots more. I'm really excited to welcome back to the show today, Tonya. Tonya, how are you doing?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Welcome. As we were just kind of chit-chatting before the show, you're in Pennsylvania and expecting just a bit of snow. How much?
Yeah. Well, I think we could get like a foot of snow, and it started a little while ago, so I love snow.
That's exciting. I went live on Instagram and then forgot to tell people why they're watching just me talking kind of the side of my head. I went live on Instagram for a little bit just to remind people that we are currently live on YouTube, photorec.tv/live. I'll let this run just a little bit more, but if you go to that URL, you'll pop right over to YouTube and join us where you can chit chat and hear everybody else. It'd be fun to figure out how to do a stream that has all of this audio straight out to Instagram as well sometime. But what I want to take a moment and show is that, Tonya, not only are you a talented photographer, self-portrait photographer, but you're also a pretty good sculpture artist working in the medium of snow. So let me take a moment and share your recent Facebook post. That Statue of Liberty you said was about 10 feet tall?
Yeah, it was. And
very nice.
It's a little precarious being on a ladder in the snow, so I don't recommend it.
I would imagine so. And you've got a giant squirrel here and a great Easter Island head, and a nice little scene, and very, very nice. Do you have in mind already something that you'd like to sculpt during this snowstorm?
Well, my friends on Facebook were telling me that I should go for Baby Yoda, and that's pretty tempting, actually.
That is great. Speaking of Baby Yoda, let's bring in Steve Scurich. Not because he looks like Baby Yoda, but just because he's a great Star Wars fan. That's where I was going with that.
Oh man, you know what's the funniest part about that is I started laughing when she said Baby Yoda, and in my mind I thought, I know Toby's gonna cue me in right now.
It just worked. It just worked so well. We didn't even need to set that up. Yeah.
That's awesome. Tonya, great job on those sculptures. Those are incredible.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's look through a couple more.
I mean, yeah, you are such a well-rounded artist. It always amazes me. There are certain things I miss from my old Facebook days, and your posts are definitely one of them. But I get to follow you on Instagram, and that's really exciting. So, go follow Tonya. She's got multiple Instagram pages, and she's extremely artistic in all sorts of creative ways. It's very inspiring. But thanks for having me back. It's nice to be here. And yeah, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I always have been, but I have become a massive Mandalorian fan, which kind of goes hand in hand with Star Wars, of course. But man, that show is so good. It's my all-time favorite show right now.
That's
nice.
My whole family. We all watch it together.
Yeah, and I've heard that from so many people. My sister and her husband and my niece and two nephews, they all watch it together as a family. I've got my best friend out in California. He and his whole family watch it together. He said everybody's getting Mandalorian stuff for Christmas. And I love it. It's great.
My son really wants me to make him a Mandalorian helmet, so.
Oh, that would be cool. That would be very cool.
We've cosplayed some Star Wars for Halloween in the past, so that's probably.
Yeah, somewhere I've got an old Boba Fett spaceship toy, but I have no idea. And it's probably half broken at this point, as from my childhood. But I don't know. It's a lot of this newer stuff that's come out has been entertaining to me. And as a Star Wars fan, I always like it, even the movies that get the horrible.
A great show.
Well, we're still on that subject. I was just about to say that all the newer stuff that's come out recently is very entertaining to me as a Star Wars fan. I always like it. But this show kind of brings me back to that sort of exciting, warm, fuzzy feeling you got the first time you watched the old Star Wars when you're a kid.
Mm-hmm.
It's just cool to see it all kind of linking together in the way that it's filmed and stuff. And I think Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are just doing an awesome job with the show.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I've seen the first season. I haven't seen the second season yet, but I'm excited to watch.
Yeah, we're not sponsored, by the way, but hey,
Good.
if
photographically, what have you guys been up to? Both of your social contact is down below. Steve, you gave a shout out for following Tonya. Anybody watching this show, the least you can do is follow these guys on their social medias. Both of them are actually posting now. I can say that because Steve has posted some pictures. So you should go check out what they're doing. And Tonya, I love on your Instagram stories the kind of behind the scenes as you set up for some of the self-portraiture. And we, I think many people, when they look at some of the content you've created, they can sense or feel the amount of work that goes into it. But then when you see you individually gluing tack after tack after tack to a glove, I think that it becomes much more noticeable just how much work goes into making some of these images.
Well, thanks. Yeah. Sometimes I feel like a crazy person. I'm working on the new shot right now, and I was like, if I posted this to my stories, people would not be my friends.
Oh, now I totally want to see it.
I was like freezing a Barbie's head into an ice cube. It was perfectly normal for me. So.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, I did that as a kid. I just never then took fun pictures with them. So. Yeah. Totally. All right.
That's coming, so that's exciting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Steve, I'm curious. We've been talking about snow. I see folks in the chat room, and I just want to say, one, if it really is supposed to come down as hard as they're saying for some of you, time lapse is a really cool way to document and capture that. GoPros are great because you can just stick them right out there in the snow. Although you're probably going to need to run power to them because a GoPro in colder weather is not going to last long enough to really document. But your camera, if you've got a dummy battery or something like that, shooting out the window can work as well. Steve, have you ever done any real estate with snow?
With snow?
Yeah, I was just curious, like snow, a snowy foreground to the house.
The quick answer is yes, but not very much. So, I shot a few homes last year here in Cincinnati. And all my real estate work prior to this, and I also did in Chicago, but that's different because it's mostly high-rise stuff. And so, house or an apartment generally looks the same in the wintertime as it does the summer, but the view out the window looks a bit different. I have, but not that much because most of my real estate work was in Southern California. And then the market is really hot in the spring and summertime out here. It really dies down a lot in the wintertime. It's pretty hot right now because interest rates are low and those who have money to burn. I know that a lot of people are hurting right now, but there seems to be quite a chasm that's forming between those with money and those that don't have any.
Yeah.
So they're buying up a lot of real estate, but I really haven't been shooting much. And we've got today we got some snow. We had a great day of snow about a week and a half ago. But we don't get a whole lot here in Cincinnati. Yeah. We are expecting a cold, snowy winter, so we'll see this year. But quick answer, yes. However, I'd like to shoot a lot more in the snow.
Yeah. I was just curious because it's not something I've ever feel like I've come across, browsing housing listings. But one, I've never really browsed for a house in the wintertime. And two, now here in Seattle, it'd be very rare to see a house for sale with snow pictures.
Yeah, it's kind of hard too because holiday decorations really can date the photos that you're showing. And I kind of struggle with that because if you know that it's a home that's going to sell quickly, it doesn't really matter. But if the home is a high end home and it might be on the market for 6 months, say, you don't want pictures with Christmas trees and holiday decorations and stuff, because January 1st, people don't want to see that in real estate photos. They also generally don't want to see a whole lot of snow and cold weather, because that's not really warm and inviting. It's beautiful. I love it. But, you know, a lot of times you kind of want to encourage people to, okay, let's take some shots before you get the holiday decorations up, or if you have limited decorations or you're going to sell your house, let's pull this stuff down and shoot it. And so those are things that we really have to think about.
Yeah. Good points. Yeah. I want to switch it up just a little bit before we dive into the Lightroom section where we review our community member photos and give them some tips and tricks, which I don't think I officially said. Hi, chat room. Thank you so much for joining us as I was watching and seeing, you know, giving the weather reports. We've got Kevin in Connecticut who is in for a real nor'easter, and then we've got Tom, you're like outside San Diego-ish area, if I remember correctly, and you're like, hey, sunny and 72. So it's just fun to see those weekly weather reports from you all. But I wanted to ask both the community and Tonya and Steve, both of you. I put out the call yesterday, as I have every year for the last 7 years now, asking for each community member to pick their very favorite picture that they captured this year in 2020. And certainly recognizing that for some of us, I think we captured far, far less than typical. But even with that, I'm still, you know, about 20,000 pictures from a couple of trips we squeezed in here and there, and a bunch of local social distancing camping trips. How difficult is it for you to look back? Tonya, let's start with you. Your work is quite different than most of the people that I have on this show, in that it's, you know, very good, fine art, self-portraiture. How difficult is it for you to look back over your pictures from this year and find just one that you're like, that's my favorite, or maybe you call it your best work?
Well, that's a good question, because this actually was probably a better year for me as far as quantity, because a lot of the things that would pull me away from that were canceled. So in quarantine, I spent a lot of time just creating artwork. So I don't know. And I feel like I don't shoot anything that's very similar to the next thing that I'm shooting. So I don't know how to pick a favorite. I do think that my couch series is a little defining for me this year, so I'll probably pick something along those lines. But there are some things where I feel like maybe the end result didn't land the way I had hoped, but I really learned something in the way I created that, and that makes it a favorite for me. And then there are some times where it's like I produce exactly what I see in my head, which is not often, and that's also very kind of sentimental to me, just to pull something completely off from concept to finish. So
yeah. All right, interesting. Yeah. Steve, how about you? This year, I know you did not travel nearly as much, but you know, how hard is it for you to pick a favorite?
I think this year, when I saw that call out to get those, I love when you do this every year, by the way. I thought, oh man, this year's going to be so tough because I didn't do any traveling, and everything's been real estate this year. My whole catalog is just property addresses. But the more I thought about it, I do have one picture. I have two pictures that I really, really like from this year that aren't real estate. But one in particular that just means a lot that I'll probably be submitting, and that is, it's kind of a composite. It's a panorama that I took at my daughter's wedding in Maui in January, which was like just a blowout family celebration. It was awesome. And then everything shut down when we got home. Yeah. But it was of the church at sunset. And then I kind of doctored up the sky. It was a pano, and I stitched it together, doctored up the sky, cleaned it up. And then I took them from another photo and I put them on the steps in front of the church kissing. And it looked, I spent a lot of time on it, and I ordered her, my daughter, an acrylic, a large acrylic for her wall, the picture. And when we were down in San Diego visiting her a couple months ago at her new house, I got a chance to see it, and I, went over it with a fine-tooth comb because, it was the first time I'd actually seen it in print. And it turned out really, really good, And we talk to people about this all the time, like taking the time to make sure it looks right. So when you print it large, you don't notice anything. It looked totally legit. And I think that's going to be the shot that I submit.
Nice.
One, because it required a lot of work, and I was really happy that it turned out right. But also, you know, being just the special time in Maui.
Sure, it means something.
Shut down, and so that's probably the shot.
Yeah.
The other was the ticket I shared with you.
We don't have I think that's good. And you know, from the chat room, a lot of folks are saying they took, you know, less photos this year. Ursula's saying she's about 1/3 of her usual number of shots this year. That's almost exactly about my ratio too. It's definitely about 1/3 of what I've been typically shooting. It doesn't necessarily make it easier for me though. I still have, you know, just like 3 or 4 pictures that I really like, and which one is my favorite. You know, Tonya, you mentioned, you know, having these groups of pictures being very different from one another. I went to Death Valley this year and captured some pictures I think that are very different from typical. Not necessarily because of the way I captured them, just because Death Valley is just such a different looking place than where I usually travel to, with some greenery and some, you know, snow-capped peaks and things like that. So those really do stand out to me, and one of those might be one of the ones that I end up picking. But we also had a fantastic McKay trip to Yosemite right at the very beginning of the year, mid-January, that we had that early snowfall, and it just turned to, it wasn't early snowfall, just a snowfall, and it turned into just a gorgeous day of photography. So kind of like bookending this year with Yosemite, that was fantastic, and then a Death Valley road trip not too long ago. And so I think something out of that is what I'm going to pick as well.
Toby, I followed you almost from the start of joining Instagram. Your stuff has become so artistic. Like if you scroll through your news feed, it has just, I don't know, every time I'm just like, oh, that's my new favorite one. But I just feel like your feed just gets better every day. I love it.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Especially I concur with Tonya there, but especially with your drone shots. I've noticed just in the last couple of years that you're probably, you know, your ability to fly the drone has improved and stuff, but your composition and what you're capturing and how you're putting out there with your drone shots has become very artistic compared to, you know, years past where they're just more, you know, cool shots.
It's always been technically fantastic, but something just, I don't know if it's for you or for me, just clicked artistically when I see your stuff. So I love it.
Nice. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Yep. All right, so let's dive into the part of the show we all really enjoy. It's where Pen members have submitted their images. If you're watching this and you're not a Pen member, it is an incredible resource for you to grow as a photographer. 2020 did definitely constrain many of us in how we could travel, how we could learn photography. But I think our Pen members really grew a lot. And one of the examples of that was the sheer number of people that participated in the PPA competition and did incredibly well with, you know, top tier images. But Pen members, we have folks of all abilities in there. I love to see all of the different images and see where you are in your photographic journey, and we can support that. New members can join for just $24 for your first year. I calculated that out the other day. That's like 46 cents a week. That's 2 quarters. 2 quarters a week. And you have access to hundreds of hours of training videos, new video, and a new article each week. Plus, you get immediate access to all of the back articles. And the community and this show, being able to submit images. And again, I stress this often, but I haven't done it enough lately. The community is an amazing group of people. So photorec.tv/pen is the easiest way to learn more about that. Give it to yourself as a Christmas gift. Give it to somebody else as a holiday present. It is just a really good way to kind of get into a community that is truly going to support you and answer your questions and be there for you, both from everybody else and also the professional photographers that are in there. So let's dive into some pictures in Lightroom. We've got a fair number. I'm just going to remind you that we do love this, but we also try to keep this section of the show reasonably short. So first up, we've got this shot from Marjorie, some kind of old roots in snow here. And she wrote me and said, I'm struggling a little bit. I really like this image, but I just don't quite know where to go from here. And I'll tell you the first thing that I want to do to this image is a little bit of cropping. It feels like there's a little bit of room up top that isn't necessary. And then, I don't know where though, somewhere in this, I don't think it should be made into a square. I like a little bit of room, but I don't think it needs all of that room that it had. And then I'm immediately going to go to contrast and just start to bring the contrast up and see what happens. I want to get some additional definition out of the kind of wood there and here. And I might end up painting some of that on, or I'd suggest that. What else, Steve? Well, you got anything?
Yeah, I like exactly where you're going with that. I would take the highlights down a bit. This becomes the I call it the snow dance of editing. Because you want to show the texture of the snow, but you still want to keep it as white and bright as possible. And you're really starting to see it on the right side in the shadows underneath the two branches. So by taking the highlights down and maybe increasing the shadows or decreasing the shadows a little bit might kind of darken some of those areas and show you some of the texture in there. And then the texture slider, kind of play around with that a bit, or even paint it on in certain areas. I have a tree shot from the PPA competition, just a tree by itself. The title was Old Faithful. And I spent a lot of time bringing out the detail in the snow. And it did very well in competition. And I don't say that to brag. I say that because that's kind of what you want to go for, but it takes quite a bit of work to get that, as I call it, snow dance right. Because it's very easy to gray out the scene and just, it no longer looks like, clean snow. So, yeah, I like what you're doing here. Marjorie, this is an awesome picture, but you're right on the money to do that because it was very flat before.
Yeah. Tonya, anything else that you see that jumps out at you?
No, I really like what you're doing. I was actually just going to mention cloning out that little piece at the top, so you got that.
Yeah. Yep. I got that. All right. Well, I got that, but Lightroom didn't in translation. But I think that gives you a good start there, Marjorie. All right, we're going to move on. Roger's got "Oh Happy Day."
That's one of my wife's favorite songs, actually, at church.
I wonder, is it safe for us to guess that this might be a sky replacement?
I'm so glad you said that because it does feel like that. And I don't say that to Roger in a way like, oh, you screwed up here, Roger. I think just it's on our mind because we've been talking about it a lot lately. Yeah. But it does feel like the light in the sky and the light on the pigeons isn't quite the same.
Well, and unfortunately, just where it lands, I feel like right between them, I really need some of those dark clouds to blend it for me.
Mm-hmm. You're not happy about this kind of just empty space here. Yeah. I'll say, maybe I should back up a step and just say, I love this pigeon's expression. I love the clarity and the focus and sharpness on the eye. I think overall, this is a really, really nice picture. If I hit the R key and I just, you see, just a tiny bit off here when I, let's hit Shift O just O, changes to the small grid. Yeah, the small grid. We can see that we're just leaning a little bit. I don't know, but I feel a little bit better if we bring that down so it's even there. And what do we think? We have a very distinctive out of focus stretch here before we get to the focus rocks. It distracts me a little. Am I being too picky?
Nope. That was the first thing I noticed.
Yeah. So I'm gonna come up there just a little bit. And one other spot that gives me just a little bit of a clue that this might be sky replacement is just a little bit of haloing here. Yeah. And it looks to me like haloing here, but I think it's not actually. I think it's just legitimate kind of backlighting or lighting of those feathers. I think that's natural. So
I was wondering if there isn't just a faint. I even feel like on the bird that's kissing along the wing, that maybe there's a little bit of a halo. And man, if we're wrong and this was the sky, sorry, Roger. He's fantastic. I don't even question that they're in focus because I know this is his, so they are.
yeah.
True.
I don't see that along the wing. The wing looks okay to me. The only spot I'm noticing is here. Yeah. Yeah, I don't have anything. Other suggestions? Echo Tonya. I think if you could fill this in with a little bit of cloud, so it felt like all kind of one of that sky, and get rid of that foreground. I think you have a very, very nice shot. Steve, you are our resident virtual matte. Any comments on the virtual matte here?
No, it looks okay. It's a white matte, obviously, and by putting that on there, it kind of dulls down the brighter parts of the sky and any of the brighter parts within the photograph. So I'd like to see it without the virtual matte, and then I would probably play around with just I would probably use a black virtual matte and then use a stroke line that kind of ties into maybe something in the bird, whether it's the bluish gray in the head of the bird. I'd also like to see paint on some lightning on the one that looks like it's kissing the other one, because it's in the shadow, and you see the harsh shadow that kind of goes right down the middle of the body and the neck, and it's just so dark up around that bird's eye that I just want to see that whole interaction right there brightened up.
Yeah, good points. Good points. That virtual matte though is
the virtual matte guy, because I wouldn't have put a matte on this.
Yeah, I actually, Tonya, I agree with you. And I've told people this before, virtual matting is a way to kind of finish off the product and just show it, like competition wise and stuff. But if I was sharing this photo, and I virtual matte a lot of my stuff when I share it, but I think if I was sharing this photo publicly, I wouldn't matte it. You're right, because especially if it is a sky replacement, you don't want to draw more attention to that sky back there. And Roger, if you did a sky replacement, I think you made the adjustment of defocusing the sky a little too harsh. I want to see a little bit more. I mean, this could definitely exist. And like you guys said, if it's not a sky replacement, deepest apologies. But if it is, there's a defocus, at least in Luminar sky replacement. And it's very easy to take that a little too far, because it's quite blurry back there.
Yeah, nice. All right, thank you, Roger. We're gonna move on. Kevin Walk has this artistic wave in. I think this is in a river, and it's one of those little, part of the rapids.
I'll quickly chime in on this one, Kev. And I know he's watching. I saw him in the chat room earlier. Really cool idea. But first I would crop this in. You got a lot of bright and some dark stuff at the top that doesn't need to really be part of it. So yeah, you can come down there, come in there, don't cut the top of the wave off, and then maybe even come up just above that dark zone on the lower right. Yeah, right in there, Toby. And then bring the highlights down. You want to get all that texture back in the movement and what's going on. So bring the highlights way down. Might have to bring some whites down too, and increase the blacks a bit, just to, kind of increasing that contrast. And then you'd probably want to go into Photoshop and clean up a lot of those spots that are just blinding white and blown out. If you hit the J key, you'll be able to see them pretty easily. Oh, they're not.
They're not. I was surprised. Like right here, that looks clipped to me.
Yeah.
Interesting. Huh. Yeah, I see that. So yeah, I'd clean those up. I tell you, Steve, after that cropping, now we're staring straight into this swoosh.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of fun for me.
Yep.
Nice job. Yeah, we got a little bit of stuff back there too. Very nice. All right. Ursula is submitted this lovely Fontainebleau State Park in Louisiana. Look at why is there a recovery slider? Wow.
Everything, all those Let's see, fill light, status. That's odd.
Why is this different?
I don't know. That's strange.
Let's go to another image real quick and then come back.
Would it bring in her? It wouldn't bring in her panel to your Lightroom Develop module, right? Showing a DNG. It's weird.
How'd you do this, Ursula? I'm supposed to know about Lightroom, and I've never seen a fill light and a recovery right here, sitting here. And Ursula, I know, is in chat too. Oh, she says her edits are not on. This is strange. All right, I'll tell you what, Ursula. We want to see the one that you've edited, so let's hold off. We'll come back and figure that out. You and I will talk, and we'll figure that out next week. We got enough this week that.
And Ursula, I would encourage you to check out black and white on that one. All right, let's move forward.
Okay. which she might have done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Lynn has this nice group of little white pelicans. And first thing I want to commend is you're shooting these white birds, and it looks to me like you've really got exposure nice, which can be tricky. But we zoom in, and there is we don't need to go to 400%, and there is good detail even through the parts of the feathers that seem like they're being hit directly by light, and that's what you really want to be careful about when you're photographing white birds or any brighter white subject. Mm-hmm. This is very nice. I'm not sure what I'd suggest. Either of you want to jump in?
I love this. I think she could come up just a little on the bottom. And it looks, and I'm looking at this second hand screen, maybe a little more detail in the darks, but I love the composition of the birds. That's very fortunate and well done. With animals, it's like a mixture of both, always.
Yeah.
But they all have like such nice head turns, and you have the eyes of every single one. It's just a great moment. Yep.
We even got a catch light, and we can even just see that they got red eye. This guy's eye is red. It's very nice.
Beautiful.
Maybe paint on a tiny bit more texture and clarity, especially on this guy. I think his neck is just a little bit softer than the others, but otherwise very nice.
You know what's cool about this? A lot of times on the show, we've talked about using odd numbers and how that's just more visually pleasing. And you can't always put your finger on why that is. Mm-hmm. But I counted these birds as one of the first things I did because the image was so visually pleasing. And I was like, wow, there's an even number of birds here. But what you have is an odd number of beaks being shown. And maybe that's just why it really works. I love the way each of them is kind of in a little different position. I love the way it was edited. I think my only suggestion is to take this into Photoshop and just clean up a bit of those little spots in the background. You just go through there and just clip with the healing brush. It'll take them out. And if you compare it to this photo with one that's just been cleaned up just a little bit, it will make a big difference, and it'll keep you visually invested in the birds. Because once you start to notice some of the little dots and stuff in the background, it's hard to not look at them. But that's really splitting hairs on this particular image because I think it's absolutely stunning.
Yeah. I just real quick, Pam asked in chat, are there lines in the background? And I do see these vertical lines that I suspect are reflections of trees or something. And once I saw those, they do start to distract me a little bit. So I just wondered about softening that background just a little bit. I just drew a graduated filter down from the top and limited it to the kind of golden color. That was just kind of a quick, cheap way to show that. But you probably want to just carefully do it and then erase it off these heads because you certainly don't want to lose any of that detail there. Cool.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Moving on, Mike has submitted this shot here. I believe this is over the city of Portland with Mount Hood in the background. I think Mount Hood. And it's got those layers that I love.
So cool.
So cool.
It's like the industrial mountains in front of the natural mountains.
Yeah. we have the haze that kind of sits in these valleys and so nicely kind of separates each of these peaks, and they're just a little bit cleaner sticking up. The only thing that kind of strikes me is maybe we could get a little bit more contrast and, just a little bit more detail out of the main mountain itself. So I'm going to get my brush and up texture, up clarity, up dehaze, and just paint over this area just to see if we can bring that out a little bit more, kind of taking that idea that we have from those other peaks. Other than that, I think this is very, very nice.
There's it's hard for me to tell the clarity on my monitor just watching this video stream. So I'm going to assume that it's very clear.
Yeah,
it looks outstanding. But there's a lot of gold up there. It's almost a little out of balance. I think it looks really cool. I would just consider maybe dropping the crop down just a little bit. And I don't know if you want to lighten the gold just slightly. It's beautiful. It's a really nice. See, it's hard with the virtual map stuff, but and I would say that because the buildings at the bottom are very, very close to the bottom of the frame, and then you've got the mountain at the top, and then you've got a pretty good space before you get to the top of the frame, which visually makes the buildings look even closer to the bottom getting cut off. You know what I mean? So just some considerations. I think the way it was shown was absolutely gorgeous, but just a couple things to think about. That bright gold up there is going to be quite dominating, and I don't know that you have to show quite as much.
Yep. And I like that suggestion, Steve. And one of the things where if you bring that out a little bit, then you set up a little bit more of a gradation. We have a little bit of this warmer color kind of fading to a little bit of a lighter color. So it makes it feel a little more dynamic in the sky as opposed to just kind of a solid color filled in.
Yeah.
Nice, Mike. All right, Jeremy Lavender's got Tranquil Serenity. Now, I always have the unfair advantage over Steve and Tonya that, one, I usually get the chance to look at these pictures beforehand, and two, of course, they're nice and crisp on my monitor if they've been submitted at a nice size. And I went through all of these earlier, and I am a sucker for flowing water pictures. I like what we did to Kevin Walks. I really kind of like the stream. But the thing that hits me in this image that keeps pulling me away is everything going on in the background. And I see the idea here, this kind of tranquil stream running through this lightly forested landscape, but I don't know about you guys, but I just want to get rid of most of that and just kind of come down, and it becomes a very different image, a very much simpler image, but and it doesn't tell the same story, but I'm not pulled out of the image as much or out of the pretty stream.
Yeah,
Talk me out of that, or agree with me? What do you think?
I think you're onto the right. The thing that's bothering me about this image is you have so much that's actually in focus, crazy clarity right at your feet, and the same clarity on the far right, and then you've got a little bit of fall off, but it's pretty clear in the background. But where the water is rushing over the rocks, it's so hazy and unclear. It doesn't look like movement of water, like rocks underneath the water. It just looks like bokeh or blur where it shouldn't be. You know what I mean?
Well, and I think that the reason that's so tricky here is because I want that to be the focal point of this, but it feels wrong because everything else is in focus.
Right. Yeah.
So I really can't pinpoint where I'm supposed to look.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good suggestions. Jeremy does say the title was a little tongue-in-cheek. As those who participated in the PPA know, we saw lots of images with similar names.
What's the title?
Tranquil Serenity.
That's good. Very true, too, Jeremy.
Yeah. All right. Pam Case has King Tides in La Jolla. And I just want to say, Pam, for going from a blurry picture of a non-moving iguana in a tree to nailing this pelican in flight, I'd say you are our most improved photographer so far this year. Good job. Pam is a good friend and awesome McKay client, so I think she understands that I'm teasing her just a little bit. But seriously, you zoom in. Let's see, if we go even to 400%, and this Pelican is sharp, and I feel like there's even a little bit of motion blur to the water in the background. So you panned with this Pelican, and that's my assumption, and you just did a really nice job.
What are the camera settings on this?
It is a 250 millimeter lens, f9, 1/320th of a second.
Okay.
Yeah. So just, I think, with a longer focal length lens and just a tiny amount of panning, you've gotten a little bit of a blurry a background, and that helps with the separation. This could maybe just be distance out of focus, but it feels a little bit more like motion. I could be wrong.
I don't know if it's because of the replay or the file size. It looks very kind of grainy or noisy to me. It's in focus, no question about that. I don't know if the clarity was brought up too much, or if it's just a smaller file that's kind of being shown larger, and then it's on replay to me. And like we've mentioned on the show, I don't get to see how clear the photos actually are.
Yeah. I think, when I zoomed in, that was 400%, so it was a little bit over. It does seem a little bit crisper than maybe we would like, Pam. And I'm not sure where that's coming from, but in general, overall, looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Crop in a little. Let's see, just the head here is a little bright. I'm almost starting to lose detail, so I'm going to bring down overall exposure and highlights a little. I don't know. Tonya, is there anything else that jumps out at you on this image?
No, I'm glad you cropped it in because I wanted to see the bird a little bit closer, but I think this is a great shot from Pam.
Yeah, nice.
Oh yeah, I like that vignette that you just put on there. It helps the bird. It makes it a little bit more three-dimensional. Tone down those bright spots in the back.
Yep.
Good job.
All right. Dolph submitted this from our Yellowstone trip before everything went crazy in early February of this year. And this is I think it's called Big Springs. It's a gorgeous spot we snowmobile out to and do photography for part of the day. This spot and a couple other spots. It's a great trip. There seems to be something going on with the colors here. Are you all seeing that? I'm seeing some...
Yeah, it looks like there's green in the highlights and magenta in the shadows, like it was split tone.
Yeah.
Yep. So let's see. We've lost our split toning panel. So let's say you said green in the highlights. So let's say if I come down here to the highlights panel and I drag away from green, if I can kind of battle that back. And then in the shadows, what do we got in the shadows? Too much green? Or not enough green? Which way do we want to go here? Ooh. I don't know. Another way, let's see, another option that makes I'm more comfortable with. What if we come down to kind of the magenta and the purple and we just reduce the saturation of those? Yeah.
It's a beautiful scene, though.
It is.
I want that much snow.
What happens if we just go black and white? The lazy man's fix to working with weird color overlays.
I think, I was seeing that green too, but the image itself, I think, plays better as a black and white anyway, because it gives it a much more timeless sort of look. Because look at this scene. I mean, this is kind of screaming out for black and white.
Yep. The only other thing, we've got this one tree here. Is it worth cropping in and losing part of that to get rid of that tree, or then we lost too much of our cabin?
Yeah, I would leave it.
Yeah.
I also would leave it. I think you should just Photoshop all the pine needles back on.
One at a time. That's a feature. That's a feature coming in the next version of Photoshop. Is
you have to have a brush for that now, right?
Foliage creation. Yeah.
Hey, Toby.
Oh, yes, Steve.
Real quick, go to the crop tool. Go back out to fit in the crop tool, and come in from the right side, cropping out those last two trees. Keep coming. Just if you look at where the snow meets the water at the bottom, just right there. And now come down from the top to put that cabin in the top left third. That's a little square. Yeah, there we go. I'm trying to crop out the bright sky. So notice is white snow and the cabin. I don't know. I like them both, but this becomes much more of a story about the cabin in the snow with the water and stuff rather than.
Yeah.
You do kind of lose its placement in the scheme, in the overall scheme of things.
Yep, yeah. I think that's nice. I was about to point out, is we do have a little bit of haloing up here, Dolph. So watching in your editing, I think you might have painted this tree to bring it a little bit brighter, which I commend, but then some of that bled into the sky, and you have just a little bit of haloing around that. Nice.
I kind of like the whole crop as it was. I don't know. It's tough. It's two totally different stories, but I like that this makes the cabin feel small.
Yeah. It didn't have the feel that I thought it was going to, but that's what we encourage people to do. You know, you're not going to break the file. Play around with some different ways of telling your story.
Absolutely.
All right. Lori Baylor's got this one from our time in New Zealand.
Oh, love that.
Take me back.
I remember this exact spot, actually, when we stopped here. It was towards the later part of the trip.
Yeah. What do we come in? Just a little bit. I don't know. This last clump doesn't feel like it necessarily adds anything for me.
Yeah, I know the hole at the bottom middle is going to need a little bit of Photoshop work, I think.
Mm-hmm. Would you like to see this kind of filled in here as well?
Yeah, because and also on the far left, as soon as you notice that, all of a sudden you're like falling in it visually.
Yeah, and
so it's very strange to me that the one side of this is so high contrast and the other side is so flat. And I just wonder if we could bring a little more contrast, like even out the other side a tiny bit.
So would you suggest kind of brightening the shadows on the left, or would you like to see more contrast added over on the other side, or a little bit of both?
Maybe both, but I would start with adding contrast, I think, to the other side. I don't need it to be as dramatic as the left, but it just felt really flat compared to the other side.
Yeah, it was a little more hazy over there, huh?
Yeah. Good suggestions. And I came down out of the sky a little bit, as we often say. At a certain point, if the sky's not doing anything different, we have some of those clouds that are kind of exciting. I don't think we need more of them.
Yeah, I think that was a good move.
Nice, Lori. All right, we are trying to get just through these last ones. Steve Partridge has another shot from Zion here on the bridge. And gosh, this is, again, we've talked about it almost every show since it was really kind of officially released, the easy sky replacement in Photoshop. But I do wish something more was going on in the sky up here. So does that mean that I should automatically kind of crop in? If the sky is just kind of that empty, should we just get rid of as much sky as possible?
You could do that. I mean, there's quite a bit showing it. The first thing I thought of when I saw this image is I would love to see it as a black and white. Now, I know that's a difficult decision because you have the red rock and you have this beautiful green tones in the trees and stuff. But if you do that, you're going to process it very differently, a lot more contrast and stuff. And then a flat sky doesn't really matter too much. But I think if you stick with color, I think you were on the right move of just cropping some of that out. And then I'd probably come in from the left a little bit, maybe come in from the right slightly if you're keeping it, color.
Steve, let me ask you, when you go black and white with your sky, are you now looking for a white sky, a black sky, or does it depend?
It depends, and a lot of times what I do is I'll put a graduated filter up in there, and I'll darken it or I'll lighten it. I'll just create a little bit of dimension to it, because a bright sky or dark sky can look very flat. If you're not seeing stars and stuff up in the sky, really dark sky is just going to look flat. White sky definitely looks flat. So just putting a graduated filter in there can help just create sort of some depth and three-dimensionality to the sky.
You know,
I'm second guessing my black and white here, by the way, folks, because taking that color away just, I don't know. It's so beautiful.
I think that the last time I was on the show, we had another image of this scene from a different member, and it was processed in color, but warm. And it's amazing to me how this one, which is processed in color with the cooler tones, it almost tells a completely different story, even though I'm guessing you guys were all there at the same time. And I like
I believe the image you saw. Sorry, the image you saw on the other was an evening shot, and this was well, it was close to evening as well, I think, but not. It was two different trips, two different participants. So
I just remember that one having some really nice orange tones, and this one is just, I don't know. I feel like the blues in this really work for me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I love the bits of the blue in the sky. I don't love the blue as it picks up in the shadows, and so that's something that I would work out. The black and white, I don't know, Steve. As soon as I went black and white, I feel like I really honed in on these mountains back here. And when it's color, I kind of land on this bright, this yellow green here, and then we have this dark green here and this red here. It's fun that we have all these colors, but I think it's distracting for my eye. So I'm leaning a little towards liking that black and white.
Yeah, I'm a bit torn. It is hard. And then you've got, that gorgeous, I love that yellowy green on the right side, and it's kind of cutting into the water a bit. Yeah, maybe you're onto something here, Toby. Maybe there's just too much in the scene, but I don't think that crop was it. But that would be something to definitely play around with.
And I just know from struggling with my own shots that are similar to this over the years that I often end up kind of somewhere around here, where I love the river leading you up to that Watchman Peak.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, we got to move on. Thanks for submitting that. And Robert's got this shot, and here's what I love. I'm pretty sure I know where this was taken, and you have a chance to shoot Rainier here at this location, which is an epic year-round snow-capped peak that's just massive. And instead, you chose to photograph the smaller peak, side-lit, and I just think that was a great decision. I think this image is really strong, and it works really well.
I love this shot. I feel like he knows his location so well when he photographs them. Or that's what it feels like to me. Like there's just an intimacy with this spot. I love it. I don't know. This one's really great for me.
Is the mountain in focus? The trees and all that stuff in the background?
That's 400%. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
It was hard for me to tell on my screen.
Starts to get a little soft over there. We don't have your data, and I'm curious if this was focus stacking, because we definitely have good detail in the foreground. Wow. Although when I zoom in, I'm noticing that maybe that was movement, a little bit of movement. But this has a very painterly feel to me. Robert does let us know in chat that do a sky replacement with this.
I was so it's funny because that was actually my first reaction, because I think I've seen this sky before. I don't know if he uses AI in Luminar, Skylum, or Photoshop or something else, but it looks like one of the stock skies that you can choose. It doesn't look bad. It looks awesome, and I like the way you did it, where it kind of lets the mountain do its thing in between where the break in the clouds are and stuff. And I would like the overall image just to be a little bit brighter, though. It's just a little dingy to me. I like the style, and it's a beautiful scene, but I just want it to be a little bit more cheerful.
Yeah. As you were saying that, I threw down a graduated filter to brighten the foreground a little bit, and now I've brightened it overall just a bit and added a bit of contrast. I think that does improve the image.
Yeah, one of the things you can do when you do the sky replacement, if you use Skylum or something else, I can speak to Skylum though, is You can adjust the brightness and the warmth of that. I go into the advanced sliders every single time I do a sky replacement, and I always usually brighten it up. And I kind of use their relighting the scene, but I should probably do a tutorial on this because I brighten up the sky and I either I had that like full screen.
I know, I was leaning into like
Sorry, warning, we're going back to our faces.
Staring at myself all of a sudden. But so I brighten it up and everything, and then I pull it back into Photoshop, and then I go into Camera Raw with the entire new file, and I re-edit it with the replaced sky and kind of work on the lighting and stuff there. So just something to think about, Robert. That sky that you put in there was a good choice. You did a great job with it. I would just brighten it up maybe a little bit more because what they give you is usually pretty contrasty and dark, and I tend to like mine and just a little more cheerful.
Yeah, and it could maybe have a little softening as well. But
yeah.
I did come back to our faces. That's it. We're done with those. Thank you so much for everybody who submitted. I really appreciate you taking the time to submit, and hope you found something useful there. And if you would like to submit, photorec.tv/pen. It's just one of the many, many, many benefits that you get for joining our fantastic community. So thanks, everybody. And I just want to throw up real quick. Gareth put this up for the panel, but I just want to let's just answer this now, and I'd love to see chat room too as well. If there's one place you could have gone in 2020 but could not, where would it have been and why? And I saw this question a second ago, so I've thought a little bit about it. The quick and easy answer is, back to New Zealand. Like, let's say COVID was real and I could have, gotten to New Zealand before everything got shut down. To be stuck there in New Zealand with basically no other tourists. Oh, not that we've ever, in the 2 trips that we've run there, ever really kind of run into such a number of tourists that it's kind of ruined a spot for us. But to basically have that place to yourself, plus the natives, just that would be fantastic. So that New Zealand would have been high on my list. Steve, do you have a spot you would have liked to hit this year?
I don't know. I think you hit the nail on the head with New Zealand. I've been, for some reason, looking at some old pictures from that trip a couple years back, and man, I really want to go back there. I want to get my wife there. She's never been, because you're far away from home. But I could live in New Zealand. I could live that far away from home as long as my wife and my dogs were with me. But so that would be way up there. And Iceland is always a place that I want to go to every year. And to be stuck in Iceland would be totally cool too. Albeit quite expensive though.
Yes, it's true. Yeah. How about you, Tonya?
Well, I'll go to New Zealand with everybody. That sounds fantastic. I would like to photograph the animals there. So
yeah.
Yep.
That'd be
very cute. Lots of super cute parrots. Yeah.
It's an amazing country.
Yeah. All the places I will go in chat, Kristen says the Arctic trip, which was a scheduled trip this year, and that would have been fantastic. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Lots of.
Yeah, and Greenland was always scheduled for 2021, right?
Yes.
That wasn't a reschedule. That's the one that I'm most excited about.
Yes. And I've got lined up, I think it's going to happen early in the new year, a guest who has done an expedition across Greenland, a photographer. So I'm really excited to talk to her and have her on the show at some point here as well. So, cool. And I see multiple folks in chat thinking much more practically than us and thinking about visiting family and grandkids. And yes, my mom, my poor mother, I've got a new nephew, and he was born in April, I think, and my mom hasn't put her hands on him yet. And so it's tough. We did get to see them in person on our road trip, a little socially distanced walk in the park, but of course we didn't get to squeeze his cute little cheeks either. So yeah, it's tough, and I'm just really hoping that 2021 gets us back to normal fairly quickly.
Yeah, me too.
Still.
I've been fortunate because my family has been close to me, and we've kind of just kept our circle together the whole time. So
That is
Yeah,
nice.
my immediate family were that way. We've got my oldest daughter, her husband, and 3 grandkids. They're right here. So that was like our COVID bubble.
Yeah.
You know, and we never went out of that. But once everything kind of reopened in the spring, I immediately booked tickets out to California to go see all my family, my dad, my mom, her husband, my sister, my niece and nephews. And literally like the week before the trip, there was a huge spike being reported out in California, and everybody was freaked out again because, you know, everything had opened and you knew there was going to be a spike, but then it actually happened and people were freaked out again. And so I ended up canceling that trip. So yeah, to whoever said that, that's actually probably a much more meaningful way to go, because I haven't seen my immediate family in over a year now. That does sting a lot.
Yeah, it's tough. That is tough. All right, let's move on. A couple of quick things. Last week we talked about the drone operator who had been flying his drone, breaking the rules for 124 different flights that he live streamed where it showed him breaking the rules, and the FAA hit him with a $1,500 fine per drone flight. I was just scrolling through YouTube the other day, and as it does, suggest different videos to you, and it was by another gentleman who flies his drone fairly often and has not explicitly broken the rules, but FAA did reach out to him and basically said, hey, you know what? We're all working from home, and one of the tasks that we've been given is to watch YouTube and just to see if we're coming across any drone flights and making sure people are following. And so he was very nice. He put up this drone video talking exactly about their conversation and sharing all this. And his channel is mostly drone content, and he does not have his part 107. Is that how you say it, right? The 107. He does not have that. And they're like, well, you're making money from your YouTube channel, so you need to. And he's like, okay. And so he studied for a couple of weeks, and then he says, I have it now, and they're happy. And they never find him, but they did reach out to him. He actually got talked to by 2 different people from 2 different offices separately, independently, because, you know, the government, they never actually talk to each other. But that's just a warning. So if you're out there creating content with drones, and even if you're not like, you know, charging people like Steve, you talked about getting your 107 before you use it for real estate, you need to make sure that you're on the right side of the law. So I just wanted to share that because I love drones. I think they're fantastic. But when you're flying them, you got to make sure you're on the right side of the law. And it does seem like they're finally starting to actually pay attention and reach out to people who aren't following those rules.
Yeah. That's good. I mean, we kind of beat that one last week, and I know I had some strong words about it, and I still feel that way. You know, it's not like these laws exist just to have laws. They exist for safety reasons, and so we don't have thousands of people doing this kind of thing. And I'm very, very appreciative of the fact that, and look, if you're going to have the laws and recommendations, then it's always nice to know that people are holding others accountable, because if you don't, then it just becomes crazy. And so I think that's encouraging to hear. You know,
we know that's the only reason that you haven't been flying your drone, right?
Right. Yeah. I don't want to. Yeah. I know that all the FAA guys are sitting at home and
yeah.
That's why he closed his Facebook and everything. He just doesn't want
to. That's right. That's right. Had you streamed a bunch of flights on there? That's why you shut it down.
It's actually, it was government mandated that I deactivate.
Oh boy. All right, let's talk something useful. I've got a bunch of other little stories on here. The show notes are linked right down below this video. We'll touch on a couple more of the fun ones in a minute, but useful. Let's talk a little bit about year-end wrap-up tips. This is where I start to look at my catalog. I'm not going to go on any more major shoots. I'll probably, create a couple hundred more pictures before the end of the year. But now is when I start thinking about merging this catalog with my master archive. And Tonya and Steve, I don't know if you work that way, but even if you don't, and even if people watching this don't use the idea of the catalog, kind of these tips and tricks work for whatever program you're working with. But I just want to check in. Do either of you have kind of a year end of what you do picture-wise, photo-wise, organization-wise? Tonya?
I feel like there's supposed to be a right answer.
Oh,
and I'm
this is so unreliable. So you tell people why I fixed my audio.
Okay. January is typically my slow point, so that's actually when I do my cleanup work.
Okay.
Not in December. There's too much going on in December with kids and Christmas and all of that stuff. So, like, I didn't even shoot my Christmas card photo yet, and I have to do that.
That's a really good point. As I was talking about this, thinking about this, I was thinking a lot of people probably have to spend time wrapping presents and things like that. So, but tell us a little bit about what you do in January.
In January, I'm backing up all the time. I'm an obsessive person about backing up. So I'll just do another backup, which is excessive. And then I clean everything off and just kind of start fresh, because my computer is usually pretty tragic looking. Because I think the last time I was on the show, we talked about this. Like, I use a laptop because I move to 3 different office spaces usually within a day. So I do keep a lot of my files on my computer. So it gets real slow, and I have a lot of cleanup to do. I have some massive, like, January spring cleaning to do.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned backing up. I just, I saw another story the other day from, or was a post from, a McKay client that hasn't traveled with us in a while, but I see post wonderful pictures all the time. They had a complete hard drive failure, and now, as a result of that, have lost a significant chunk of years and years worth of photos. Please, people, please back up your content onto at least one other hard drive or device. And it's just so easy to use something like Backblaze these days to just make sure. So one of the tips is, as we start to wrap up, or as Tanya points out, some folks have a little bit more time in January, as you get into the new year, take time to make sure that you have decent, reliable, and recent backups of anything that matters to you. Yeah. Steve, anything else that you do kind of to clean up?
I've got I use an external drive that's really large with my Mac, and it operates just fine with my entire catalog on there. It's all separated by years, so I've got my Lightroom catalog, and then each year I have subfolders under each year that I'm doing. I organize my catalogs that way. So I don't, and then it's constantly backed up to Backblaze. I think what I would really like to do, though, is just maybe even get a bunch of inexpensive little external drives that I can, separate a year or a couple of years in each of those, and then keep those in a safe outside of my office or off-site somewhere, or at a neighbor's house, or something like that. I know David McKay, I've talked to him quite a bit about it over the years. He seems really good about kind of backing things up onto like DVD and then keeping those off-site in a fireproof safe somewhere or something like that. So you always have access to those. Maybe I'm just putting too much reliance on Backblaze in case anything really goes wrong. They've got my whole hard drive is on there. So there's not a whole lot that I do, but I go through and I clean a lot of stuff up, but I do that along the way too. This year, just being real estate, when it comes to my real estate files, I shoot multiple shots and then I edit those and I get down to JPEGs, and then I pretty much erase everything, including the raw files, because it's not like they're meaningful or something like that. This is just work for my clients, and I keep those JPEGs, those finished JPEGs, around for years to come if they ever need them for whatever reason. But I don't need all the raw files and stuff. So I'm kind of cleaning that up. But if I've fallen behind on that at the first of the year, I generally will just clean up the entire 2020 file, folder, catalog, whatever, close that up, start a new one, and just start working day to day in that.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned kind of trying to clean up as you go. As I said at the beginning, the further away I get from a shoot or a folder, the less likely I am to dive back into it and like really work through it. And so I think that's great. But if you haven't done that, then at least kind of pass through and make sure you've deleted the rejected pictures. If you use that system, if you mark pictures for deletion, make sure you mark pictures for rejection, then make sure you're deleting them. Why keep them around, cluttering them up, filling up backup space and hard drive space? Space is cheap, but still, it's a good idea to do that. And then kind of make sure you are organized. Make sure you haven't lost any files over the course of the year. Look through missing files as listed in Lightroom or in your and it's just going to be much easier to find them now than it is in 2022 when you're like, oh, I did go on that little camping trip and half the files are missing, and you're 3 years away from something. It's going to be much harder to kind of remember that you maybe accidentally slid those into another folder or something like that.
Yeah.
And I saw this suggestion online that I thought was great. And if you've been rating and ranking your pictures as you go, then it should be pretty easy. But create a best of collection of the year. Now, I'm asking you all to submit to me your very one favorite, but hopefully you have like a handful, 5, 6, 7, maybe 10 pictures that were your favorites of 2020. Create a little collection that those are in. And as I said, one of my goals at the beginning of this year, and mostly doing it, is to kind of get my favorite pictures out of Lightroom. Make sure that's not the only place that they are. Like throw them in Google Photos or throw them online in some other kind of gallery system so that I can easily see anywhere, whether I'm in my Lightroom or not, my favorite pictures from that year. And so I really like that suggestion as well. And then, as I said, back up and start thinking. You don't have to do this yet, no pressure, folks, but start thinking about some goals for 2021. Photographic goals, kind of organization goals, travel goals. Maybe with travel goals we're getting ahead of ourselves, but we can hope, we can dream. So we'll see. And I just like that Kristen, again, all the places I go, said she had major computer issues this weekend, but wasn't stressed because she's got everything backed up in 3 spots. I just want to stress that, yes. So I love the way I use all of my computers. All my important documents are either in Dropbox or backed up to Backblaze or external monitors. And so if they literally just melt down, I really don't lose anything at all. And it's just such a nice peace of mind when things go crummy. So keep that in mind. And I don't want to really get into it, but man, this Windows laptop, I love how small it is, but that is the only thing I'm liking about it these days. And those new the Airs just seem impressive. I don't need a super powerful machine. I just need a nice travel machine that's going to work, and my old man brain isn't going to struggle with keyboard shortcuts moving back and forth or screenshot programs or how this program saves its stuff. I might make a better video about it at some point, but I really think that Air is in my future.
I think this is the part when you upload this to YouTube, you do a little bit of editing, and right there when you say that, you go back to the episode a few months ago when you just bought it, and I said, I'll be talking to you in a couple months when you get tired of that thing, and you admitted that you need to get back to an Apple laptop.
Yeah, you did. And part of it might be that this Dell is a little bit of a lemon, but God, Windows, you are just nowhere near Apple. You just aren't. You just aren't.
I'm an Apple fanboy. I fully admit that, but I'm not one of those total freak guys that's like standing in line to buy the newest product or something like that. But man, I try to do stuff on my wife's computer, and I used Windows forever. I was in the corporate world for 20 years, and I used it a lot, and I fought with that thing constantly, and it's no better today. So yeah,
I also hate Windows. I just don't even it's such a mess to me. When I look at it, I'm like, what is happening here? This is like, I'm trying to not have my brain be like that 99% of the time. Why would I want my computer to look like that?
I remember when I switched from Windows to Mac. I used a Mac all through college and stuff, but then in the corporate world, I always had Windows, but then on my personal computer, so this was probably 2003, I got back into Mac, and I remember just thinking, okay, this is really confusing and stuff, but it became intuitive very quickly. Oh, you just drag and drop. You just, okay, this is all very intuitive. And then I'd go back to Windows, and it felt like I constantly had to learn Windows language to know what to do. It just didn't seem intuitive. And yeah, so
just watching Toby shake his head because he's the one using it.
Yeah, And sorry, you guys are great sympathizers, and Steve, I absolutely remember you saying that. So I feel like I should have a strong Windows person on to have a little kind of back and forth with. But here's
them in the chat room here. People are pretty passionate about this stuff. I'm obviously passionate about working on a Mac computer. People are equally passionate about their Windows machines.
Yeah, John says he's got 0 issues with his Windows. Well, John, let me ask you this: you've got a folder of JPEGs. You just want to quickly scroll through them and look at them. How do you do it on Windows? Quick look. On a Mac, you hit the space bar, you're looking at it. You hit down arrow, you're looking at the next image in the folder. Perfect sense. Does Windows do that? No, it doesn't. Can you install some other program that will, and you select all of them, and then you have to open them in the program? Open them. That's just one.
And
example.
how much do you love Spotlight? I use Spotlight constantly.
That's another. You search for something.
Where is that? Like a couple words. It's like Google for your entire system. Yes. And it works so seamlessly and fast.
Yes,
it's great.
There are to balance this. There are some benefits to Windows. Like you can play Fortnite on it. Yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, again, this machine is so nice and compact and small, but it's not fun to use, and Lightroom crashes on it. So I didn't want to talk about this, but here we are. My goal was to have a very nice small travel laptop I could still do some Lightroom on, some teaching on. Again, I wasn't looking for a super powerful machine, but because of the hard drive format, I think moving back that same hard drive back and forth between 2 machines, I think it's a FAT32, causes some issues. I don't know if that's the root of the cause, but my Lightroom on my Windows crashes more often than not. So when I travel with it, I really just use this as a backup machine to kind of offload the cards onto the hard drive or onto a second hard drive. I barely use Lightroom on it because of how poorly it runs. And again, that might be a specific issue to this machine. I know a lot of people out there are very, very happy.
When we moved into this house a year ago, I think my wife, they sent her a new printer or something like that for her computer at work. She keeps it up in her office, and I just wirelessly print if I need to print something. So we just use that one. And I'm not kidding you. It took 15 seconds to get it to work with my computer downstairs. We were both on the same network. There it is, printed. Select my options, and the paper comes out printed. I literally spent an hour and a half setting that thing up with her work stuff, with her whole Windows system. Driver using a CD. She didn't have a drive, a CD drive. So I had to find my super drive and go plug that into a USB and then put the disk in. It was so archaic. And I know it's probably easier than that now, and I just didn't know what the heck I was doing. But holy cow, an hour and a half versus 15 seconds.
Well, that's the thing. You didn't know what you're doing equally on both machines, but the Macs generally you don't have to be. And there was a time and place where I loved that kind of dig under the hood of Windows. But now I just need my machine to work really well and connect to everything I need to connect and just kind of do it smoothly. Yeah. Okay.
Gareth does say with Mac you get stability, but you also get an empty wallet. I'm going to disagree with that because my last desktop computer, I purchased that in 2006, and I replaced it with this desktop computer in 2017. That's 11 years that I got out of my desktop computer. And this one is well on its way to do the same thing, hopefully. That doesn't leave me with an empty wallet. To me, that's a wise investment.
Yeah. And these new Airs, they are impressive, starting at $999. You compare those against a lot of little laptops and their performance. So I'm really excited to see where Apple is going to go. I try not to be an Apple fanboy. I got an Android phone, and I tried the Dell. I gave it, how many months has it been? I got this thing, I don't know, March or April or something, I don't know. And the Mac for me is better. Makes me happy. Okay. All right. Let's start to wrap up this show. I checked. Let's see. I think we're. Oh, Nikki wants to know an external monitor. She's using a 2019 MacBook Pro. She'd like to purchase a large monitor to use while editing. She's seen people mention the mono price about a year ago. Still budget friendly and great. Here's the thing. I don't want you to go too budget friendly when you're talking about a monitor for editing, especially if you're used to looking at a MacBook Pro screen, because those screens are pretty nice right out of the gate. So, I mean, it depends on how much you want to spend and whether or not you want 4K. If you keep it to 1080 and you want a nice IPS display, I think Dell has some of the best value monitors out there. I don't know beyond that. Any other suggestions?
Yeah,
this might be a great...
You can get 4K for a pretty reasonable price these days, can't you?
Yeah, I think so.
Because I would say for photo editing, I really wouldn't want something with less resolution than 4K. And it's not me being a monitor snob or anything like that. It's easier on the eyes. You get a lot more attention to the details and what you're doing. And in Photoshop, like I work really, really close on, down to the pixel sometimes on certain things. And you want it as clear and as clean as possible. It's really going to help with eye strain. And I would say 27 to 30 inches for a desktop is probably what you want. That I think is kind of the sweet spot in terms of how far away from the monitor you're sitting.
Mm-hmm. So let's see.
Kevin Watt just chimed in. He said he's got a 27-inch 4K LG monitor that cost him $400. To me, that sounds like a great deal.
Yeah, let me just show this trick real quick here. So if I bring up B&H, which I love shopping on B&H, I'm saying I searched for 4K commuter photo monitor, 5-star ratings only. Let's say price range. Let's just give an upper range of 500 and hit go. I already limited it to 27-inch screen size. Ooh, no products were found in that range. Let's take 27-inch off. And 500. Let's see if it comes up with anything. No. Well, all right. Let's get picky and say they can be 4 stars. 500. Okay, maybe you don't want to shop on B&H for this. What am I missing here? What have how have I limited this? Let's make sure that, let's say 100 to 500.
Obviously, the three of us are all iMac users, right? We haven't shopped for monitors in a long time.
Yeah. But I think, Nikki, post this question in the Facebook community group, because I know Roy has some great suggestions. Kevin can put a link to the one that he's talking about. I think in that range, you should be able to get, like this Dell here, just over 500. Currently holiday selling $529, although it's not going to be available until the end of February. Maybe that's not the best. So, but we can tell you a couple of things that you're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, maybe people are really snatching up all the affordable, good monitors that everybody's at home now.
That is a good point. Yep, that is true. So maybe that is an issue. So yeah, I think B&H might be limited, so we can get you some Amazon links as well in that.
Yeah, good point, John. Check out like Best Buy and stuff like that. It's probably a good way to go.
Yeah, I have to do a review. I still have it. I got the BenQ 4K. That's a $2,500 monitor. It's gorgeous. It's a 30-something inch. It's too big. I also have their 24 that I own, and that's a nice size. I don't think you need to go much larger than mid-20s for a size, but it gives you all of that workspace, plus you have good resolution to really spend less time zooming in and zooming out on the images. So yeah. All right. Hey, I think we've reached the end of the show. I think that's it. I don't think we missed anything too important. If you've watched to this point and you haven't yet, hit that thumbs up button. I'd really appreciate that. And I'd also love for you to take a moment and go follow our wonderful guests on their Instagrams or their social medias. We've got Steve at Scurich on Instagram, and he has posted this year. Steve, have you posted enough times to get your top 9? That's the question.
You saw my top 9 last year. I think there were 2. It was all empty boxes or question marks.
That's
and then
right.
2 pictures in there.
You have time. You only need 8 more.
That's true.
That's true. That is true.
That's true. Yep.
You know what I need to do is get back into using Later, because when I was using Later on my desktop, it was so easy. I I don't know. I don't use my cell phone, especially now that I'm not on Facebook and stuff. I'm just not on my cell phone nearly as much. But I'm at home and I've got my monitor and I can text from here and email and all that other stuff. I need to get back with later because then I'll do Instagram more probably.
Yeah. You're referring to later.com, which
Yeah.
I love. A fantastic service that lets you schedule and post to Instagram. Yeah.
Yeah. Robert Forehand, Steve should flip his top 9 choices once he creates it.
I was just about to say the same thing.
Yeah.
Yes. And Tonya, you have no problems coming up with a top 9 this year. I'm sure you can follow her at TonyaWilhelm.artist. And you've got other ones. So down below in the kind of social media link, you got your link tree. And I love all of your different accounts, but you've got some fantastic macro work as well. So people should go check that out if they don't already. And Roy, hiding behind the scenes. Roy, you had that account problem. You need to get some more photos up too. You're kind of in Steve land right now. We need to see more of your work again. Even if it's uploading your old photos, you've got some great ones on there. Roy has been in the chat room, so thank you so much for all your.
I don't think Roy's was government
hard work.
mandated though, so at least I have a good excuse.
You just can't post your drone shots and video.
Oh yeah, right.
Everything else is okay.
Okay.
That's right. Stick to that story, Steve. Stick to that story. All right, Tonya and Steve, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Chat room, thanks for hanging out with us, watching the show live. You guys make it a lot more fun, and I appreciate that. So until next week, everybody. Bye-bye.
See you.